If you're feeling frustrated and lost in your life plan and goal setting because of COVID-19, it's time to change your perspective. There is a new divine energy flowing during this time of global change, and you can play an important part in this shift. Entrepreneurs are finding success in unlikely places through the development of their divine ideas, and Cynthia Alice Anderson wants to help you feel empowered to pursue your dreams. You deserve to be a part of this new movement of innovative energy. On Friday, May 22nd, Cynthia Alice will host a free, one-time only online seminar called Change Your Perspective. The seminar is completely free and could be your life-changing moment. So join her Friday, May 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can register online at cynthiaaliceanderson.com/change. Natural Awakenings Magazine and Zen Living Realty present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 99, Rooms of Consciousness. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host, and I'm always glad to be coming to you from my home studio. And I'm here with my producer.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for show number 99, our 99th show. We're only one show away from our 100th, which, you know, amidst all the quarantine, It's going to have to look a little bit different. I know 100 is just a number, really. And I think we can still honor honor the commitment of our listeners and our patrons and everything by still doing the live show. Just maybe it might be at show 110 instead of 100.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to tell you too, I did have an idea about that, about where, but and how, but we can talk about that offline. And but yes, you know, we had this idea that show 100 was a thing, and it turns out every show's just a thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, every one is important. It just was a milestone for us. When we started this about a year and a half ago now, it's been almost, maybe it's a year. Is it
Maybe
9
2
months?
years
I don't know.
in July.
Be 2 years in July anyway. So we are so grateful for all the support, for all the listeners all around our world. I mean, you know, probably our next show on show 100, we'll give you some real specific analytics. You know, it got to the point for us, and for me, I'll say that what mattered most to me was that people all over the world were listening and that people's lives were being impacted. It is wonderful when we know a number, but the truth is this message will get out to the right people, you know, when it's time. I refuse to sell my soul to try to get listeners. What I want to do is to, you know, put out something that's of value, that's impacting your life. And when that's impacted, you start telling people, you start, you know, sharing it with your friends. It creates conversations, you know. So that's really our hope for the show, is to reach people. And, you know, I have a goal still of reaching 1 million people, and we're definitely headed the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
And that million really is just so that we reach critical mass. If we reach 1 million, my thought is consciousness on planet Earth will change. Simply because we are all seeking to do, you know, the will of our soul, which is the will of the divine within all of us, the will of the divine that is everywhere present. So, as always, here we are at show 99. We are here to bring awareness. We're here to reawaken consciousness to love, acceptance, and peace. And we're going to have some dynamic discussion today. And Dave did not know the topic before today, and it's an idea I've worked with for a long time. The title of today's show is, Dave?
Rooms of Consciousness. Now, do you mean like rooms in a house, or do you mean like making room for consciousness, or all of the above?
Well, I mean, yes, it's a mystical room, which means it's not necessarily a place you go in physical space. It's a place you go in meditative space. And any of you who grew up with the Bible know the verse that's in John, right? I believe.
Yeah, I think it's John 14:2, if it's the verse that we talked about.
Yeah. I go to prepare a place for you. And so in our times of meditation, in our times of rest, in our times of deep breathing, we are, well, let me say further, as we do our soul work, the more of our personality selves that we release, and I'll even use the word that become obliterated because the light of spirit shines is starting to shine through certain areas, that there are places in consciousness that we go. And in fact, there are rooms of consciousness within our own being, or that we can rather access through our own being and through our own time of meditation, of prayer, sometimes in deep breathing, sometimes in the act of what's called breath work, which is a very wonderful practice. And the idea, rooms of consciousness, is that you have access to all these different rooms simply because you are. You have access to all these rooms of consciousness because you are a spiritual soul. So, no matter what I say, I can't keep you from any room of consciousness that you belong in. And and we can do such a thing very consciously. And I don't mean we're necessarily being guided in a guided visualization. So often um, now it's very common, and especially right now during COVID-19, I've had more people than ever talk to me about listening to my guided visualizations, and they've talked to me about different apps, like the Calm app is a very good one, that people use, for guided visualizations. So guided visualizations are wonderful because they help quiet the mind, and they, send you on a journey. And I love guided visualizations, and I use them as well. But what I'm speaking of is us within our very own path and our very own journey, going into rooms of consciousness that we can access ourselves, that no one has to guide us to, no one has to tell us what the room looks like, no one has to send us down a path. We can do this ourselves. And it's a very mystical experience to be able to do such a thing. And I hear almost nobody talking about it. And one of the reasons why, there's nothing to be sold. It's you can do it yourself. You can access it yourself. And now everything is for sale. So I want to be very clear that you are a spiritual soul. I want to be very clear that you are 100% connected to the universe. You are 100% supported by the universe. And that whatever you need is available to you. Our work as souls is to quiet the mind and become more aware of what's available to us. So let me give you some examples. I'm trying to describe it, and I realize I just need to talk about it. Um, First of all, if you've ever had an experience where you received a vision, and I'll tell you about when I had, and this will help you start to identify the feeling I'm talking about. I had this dream, and in my dream, I was um, surrounded by my relatives and ancestors, who'd passed on. And in the dream, my ancestor lifted me up in the middle of the circle, and they put this big quilt around me. And that quilt was, had all kinds of patches on it. And as I breathed, the patches like became part of me. And I looked down, and right to my side, oh, and the first of all, the quilt became golden. And as I looked to the side, my dad was there. My dad, who'd been, passed since I was 18. My dad was there. And he said to me, "Don't mind the patches. They'll mend in time." And I had an experience, what I would call a spiritual experience as a result of that dream, a spiritual experience as a result of feeling that connected. So it was like I went into a room of consciousness. It happened to happen in a dream. And often these intuitions, these guidances forward will come to you in a dream. So the rooms of consciousness, I want to give you an example of different rooms. There is a room of knowledge. There is a room of love. There is a room of wisdom. And these rooms have already been prepared for you. So you're not making these up and no one's guiding you to them. You simply are moving into a time of meditation and then allowing the spirit that is within you, allowing your soul to be expanded into this new awareness of what spiritual support is available to you. So for instance, if there is a problem you were dealing with and there was information you needed to know, in your time of meditation, what you might do after you're breathing, after you become centered, after you feel very connected, is you imagine your consciousness moving forward. And I always picture the idea of the upper room. Of course, if you've been in Zoom calls lately, you just picture all these little all these little rooms,
So gallery
all these
boxes, yeah.
all the gallery boxes right above you. So so I always picture like this upper room of consciousness. And as I go up into that room, things appear that I need. Information is there. So like my love room looks my unconditional love room, my it's like pure God love room, looks very different and feels very different than my knowledge room. And I'm hesitating to give you too much detail about each of the rooms because I don't want you to like try to make your room look like that. We all do that. Like, well, gee, mine didn't have books. Does that mean I'm not getting the right, knowledge? So there is, I always come back to this quote, there are more things, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. We were all taught, if we grew up Christian or Catholic, most of us learn the Lord's Prayer. Yeah. Or maybe we learned to say grace or a prayer at bedtime. But what I'm talking about is so far removed from a rote prayer. In other words, these rooms of consciousness are gifts from spirit directly to you, and you don't need a priest or a minister to give them to you. They are yours already. And so I think, well, the reason I'm bringing you these today is because I've recently reconnected and I just today found a new room in consciousness, and it blew me away. And so I'm going to hold that for now. I'll tell you about it more, after I've worked with it a little bit more. But I literally felt like my as I was breathing the energy through, once you establish this connection with the consciousness, and then you start to breathe it down into the body, right? Stuff is just moved out. Old thoughts, old ways of being, old limits of your mind, limits of how you view yourself. If you need a problem solved and you go to the knowledge room and you're bringing back new knowledge, well, then guess what? Suddenly you just got an upgrade. It's like your brain is creating all these new neural pathways or like lighting up because there's all this new information coming in. Well, as the new information comes in, it doesn't just stay in the mind because it has to be integrated. And so we very rarely, I think, on the spiritual journey are conscious about how all the various energetic bodies are interrelating. And when I'm saying that, I mean the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional. These are the four main bodies that we work with. So if you're doing this work, which is a very deep, very intensive work in consciousness, if you are doing this work, if you are, spending, you know, half hour or more in meditation every day, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you rarely meditate, you're not going to be able to contact this energy because the the connection that's required for you to start receiving information is so much deeper than, okay, I'm going to breathe for 5 minutes, or I'm going to, think about God while I walk or do affirmations. No, these kinds of practices are really for the people who are willing to go deep in their spiritual process and be open to receiving information from the invisible world. From the spiritual world, some people call it the etheric realm. It's basically all the same. Some people call it Christ conscious, some people call it consciousness, some people call it the Buddha nature. And so when I'm talking about going to these rooms, it's like there's a concentrated energy that you need in this room. So I said one of the rooms was knowledge. Another room is love. So when I am in my space of meditation, if I'm feeling alone, if I'm feeling down, which I've been a little up and down the last couple weeks, something about the process I'm in of releasing so much stuff. I had last week and this week, I had one day, it was like a total down day. And I really leaned on my practices heavily, both, spiritual and physical, in the work I was doing. So the love room, the unconditional love room, the wisdom room look very different than the knowledge room. And the energy I receive, the support I receive, the guidance I receive, the feeling I receive is completely different in each room. In terms of it's how it looks, in terms of what I'm taking in. Now it's all, hear this, it's all a part of the one energy. It's all a part of divine energy, and there is no limit to divine energy. We think, well, divine energy is prayer, or divine energy is a sunset. Well, all those things are contained in the divine energy, but there's much more power, much more energy, much more information, if you will, than most of us ever receive. And I think sometimes I have a really good friend. Her name's Arlene. I'll tell her, she's a big supporter of our show too. I'm gonna tell Arlene about this show. But Arlene goes and does 30-day retreats. Now I don't do that. I've done silent weekends. Done 2 or 3 days. So when I think about people that meditate at the level of Arlene, what I know is that, and her husband is the same, by the way, that when they go in, man, they have access to information we don't even know about yet. I keep thinking I need to relate this to technology, Dave.
Oh, yeah?
Like, how many bars are we working with?
Like cell phone signal?
Yes. How much signal do we have? Because, yeah, there's something about this rooms of consciousness that when I first learned about it, and it was about 25 years ago that I first learned about it. I was in a meditation class, and the meditation teacher said, "I want you to go into the rooms of consciousness." And she said, "I go to prepare a place for you." And as soon as she said it, in my mind, I started seeing rooms literally being built. Now, they were already there, I know, but that's how my consciousness started creating, and it's everything that happens in the invisible world, right, is a reflection of our own individual consciousness. So here's why I'm saying all that. When I grew up, we were always working on a house, we were always building something. So what did I see first? I saw studs going up. I saw a truss. I saw, construction.
The framework.
The frame. I saw the frame. Yeah, happening. Now, if you grew up in an inner city, the way those rooms show up for you are going to be totally different. That's why I'm not wanting to give too much information. But what happens as you become aware, it's like all of a sudden All of this information is in the unconscious, right? Unconscious meaning we don't know about it. But as you start to meditate and you start to go deeper and you start to breathe and you say, Spirit, I need help from my knowledge room. And you start to breathe and raise your awareness. And pretty soon, your awareness gets really high. And all of a sudden, all this new energy opens up to you. So I know this is a new idea probably for many of you. And it's why I'm speaking so much about it. And I want to tell you there's no wrong way to do it. But I also want you to know, and I'll talk more in the second half about how to breathe it down and anchor it in your body and anchor it in your life. So often I see people who love spiritual things and just jump from one experience to another, almost like it's a high. It's like, oh, wow, man, that was cool. I'm going to go try this next week. And I've tried a lot of spiritual experiences myself, but I think it's very, very important for us to begin to delve deeply so we see what is really there for us. So, rooms of consciousness, we're going to come back right after this message to talk a little bit deeper about not only how you access it, but also then how you breathe it in and apply it to your life.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by calling 407-628-0705. We'd also like to extend our special thanks to Zen Living Realty. Zen Living Realty's mission is to mindfully serve, connect, and positively impact their customers, partners, and community through their Zen approach to real estate. Their vision is to be the most trusted real estate brokerage in the Central Florida area. You can reach Zen Living Realty at zenlivingrealty.com or call 407-800-2717. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome back. We're glad you're with us. I hope during the break you were listening to what those great sponsors are doing for us and can do for you. And also, kind of being with us in thought and in prayer about this. I'm amazed how the mind can take in so much at one time. And I know if this is a new idea for you, that what you want to do is go try it out. And that's cool. I really want to always be about helping you get new spiritual experiences. And I'm also very excited about a guest we're bringing on as well later that's going to really support all of us on the journey. But I want to go back to the different rooms. I'm not naming all the rooms because I want you to discover some rooms for yourself. And I want you to know that everything that you need is there for you. Everything that you need is there for you in consciousness so that you know what is yours to do, so that you can walk through the world realizing you have the support of the whole universe. I think, especially right now, with the virus, COVID, everything's about the news and COVID-19, and there's all this worry, and there's all these, just when we had a break from protests, now there's new protests, and there seems to be this. I'm not sure this is a word. Enamoratization, enamoratization of out there. And here's the interesting thing about where we are. We are forced inside, literally. And so spiritually, go inside. It's like a directive from the universe. Stop everything. I mean, everything basically has stopped. And we're still trying to go, And I've also heard a lot of stories, by the way, of so many people being out and and picketing and then, getting sick and getting more people sick and, churches doing that. And I'm thinking, wow, I can take a message, I can take a hint from the universe, go inside. And that means, yes, in your homes, but it also means spiritually. We are spiritual students. We are here to grow, prosper, and evolve as souls. We are here um, to uh, rid really our souls of all this personality identification and let the soul of us come forward and shine. So if you find yourself starting to get really wrapped up in the news and checking your device, 150 times a day, and Facebook, and then over here, it you are really missing out on the best thing that spirit has to offer you, and that is the spirit world. This time can be so rich and so full of spiritual renewal, of spiritual energy, of spiritual awakening, and in fact, can prepare you for what's next. So many of us are so focused on what's next that once again, we're missing the now. And the now, the directive is go inward, right? I never dreamed I would hear so much stay home. Okay, so our work is to go inward. Our work is to not get so enamored with everything outside of us and what is somebody saying and what is somebody doing and who has the virus and who doesn't have it. Okay, that will be there after this. So 30 minutes, if you could give yourself 30 minutes a day, you will begin to access this kind of not spiritual knowledge, this kind of spiritual experience on a regular basis. You don't have to go to spiritual teachers to get it. You are your own teacher. And you will become someone who just checks into classes, who sometimes does workshops or goes to church for the community, but not for your spiritual food because you're feeding yourself. These are the teachings I'm trying to give you. These are the teachings I'm trying to remind you of, because ultimately you don't need me either. All I'm doing is reminding you of the truth you already know. So this is an important day, rooms of consciousness. So I want to talk a little bit about how we work with energy as spiritual students and what I believe we are really called to do. So um, I've taken a lot of courses over the years, and I've worked with many people with PhDs who I've learned a great deal from at the level of the mind. And then I've worked with some wonderful spiritual people who taught me great things about the spirit. Well, my life really began to change when all those areas began integrating. Have you ever known people where you talk to them and everything out of their mouth is a spiritual word, but then they can't balance their checkbook and still live with their parents, right? So
Right.
they can contact the spiritual, but they haven't found a way to ground the spiritual down, into the rest of their lives. I've also known people very so stuck in the mind that they couldn't access the soul. Yes, they can balance their checkbook, and yes, they have money in the bank, and yes, they have a place that's paid for, but their soul is a mess, right? So we don't want that either. So anytime we are in this uh, process of learning and growing, part of the question needs to be for us: how am I going to integrate this with all my other learning? How am I going to bring this spiritual awareness down into my daily life? A friend of mine wrote a book. His name's Jim Rosemergy. It's called Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. And I love that because he has had some wonderful spiritual experiences, but he's very grounded in the here and now reality as well. I'm saying all of this so that we are becoming more conscious of what are those areas that we need to either work with or focus on so that we can begin to integrate all these spiritual experiences that are starting to happen for you. There's a healer I work with from time to time, and it's so great. She's so dialed in, and I feel so blessed to be able to work with her. And part of the work we always do at the very end is breathing everything in and through. Here's another example of what I'm talking about. I know several people who love to be spiritual, and they're wonderfully spiritual. They are. But if anything happens in their lives that they don't like, they explode over nothing because the emotional work isn't there. So you can have a spiritual awakening, and if you haven't done the emotional work, the awakening is only going to be so full and so rich because you don't have the consciousness to hold it. So I'm saying all of this because this working consciousness I'm talking about, with these rooms of consciousness that you're going to be able to go into and experience and then bring back down, if you're not working on all the other levels, you're not going to be able to maintain and receive and even hold this energy that you're privy to, that I'm speaking of right now. So it's very important for you to do, as well as your spiritual work, the psychological work, the work in your body, the intellectual stimulation that you might need to, you know, to feel challenged and happy. All of these aspects are important. I'm never saying just do your spiritual work. No, no, no. Your spiritual, again, is related to the four bodies: the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual. So when we're talking about going into higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of awareness, I want to talk to you, first of all, thank you, I got it, about how to get there. I'd mentioned in past shows that I really enjoy deeper breathing techniques. I've talked to you about reverse nostril breathing. If you've taken a class from me, we do it at the beginning of every class, as well as a couple minutes of silence. Well, my accountability partner, I've been working with for about 4 years. We talk every week. And he really inspired me with the work he's doing. And I now do this every day. So in the morning, after my journaling pieces and my reverse nostril breathing, I added 50 very deep breaths. And to breathe 50 times in a row, very, very deeply, starts to shift your awareness. It actually moves you into a altered state of consciousness, and it opens realms of consciousness that were not available to you before. Now, I've experienced this through the practice of holotropic or integrative breath work. I've done those many times and had those experiences. But in the last few months, as I've started doing this deeper breathing on a daily basis, the ease with which I'm going into these higher levels of consciousness has really sped up. It's just so as I'm breathing, I was telling my friend today that when I get to about breath number 30, I'm in a whole new gear. 20's okay, 25 is fine. 30, I'm in a new consciousness. I'm not kidding. It's like a whole new gear. It's like, wow, okay, this is taking me somewhere. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm connected to spirit. Everything feels okay. I can breathe. I feel expansive. I feel aware. I feel supported by the universe. And so, as this feeling in my body, starts to expand, I just imagine going upward. I just imagine going upward, and a beautiful if you need a way to get there, you can picture a golden elevator. If you need a guide for yourself. But what I have learned is, just as I literally raise my awareness and my breathing, it just begins to open up above me. And I find myself going into that consciousness. But the number one way for me to get there is through the deep breathing. You can do it lying or sitting, either one. And how I've been doing it lately is by lying down. I think it limits a little bit of how deep you can go, but It's been very helpful for me. I've been very impacted by certain energies lately, and I haven't slept well. So these deeper meditations, it's like taking a nap.
Mm.
I feel so aware and so alive at the end of the 50 breaths. So if all you get out of today's show is, breathe deeply 50 times, that's going to really help you. So depending on what the level of need is in your life for whether it's awareness, whether it's wisdom, whether it's knowledge, whether it's unconditional love, as you move into this higher awareness, you're going to be guided into the right place in consciousness. You will be guided to the right place in consciousness. And as you begin to become more familiar with that, you're going to be able to access it very easily. For instance, right now in this moment, I can see in consciousness my knowledge room, I can see my wisdom room, and I can see my love room. Now, I've done a lot of meditating this morning. I've done Not only have I done my own journaling and my deep breathing, I was also a part of a 45-minute group meditation just a couple of hours ago. So it's like I get tuned into this higher frequency the more I do it, and then the more available this higher energy is to me. What I've discovered about this higher energy is it is it's very high, it's very light, but it's also very powerful. If I don't consciously breathe down the new energy into my mind, into my body, into the physical aspect of me, into my thoughts, and then I ground it down in the lower chakra area, first, second chakra. I imagine that energy grounding down. And then I even imagine that the base of my spine extending all the way down into the earth like a root. And that, of course, that's what the root chakra is. That's why it's called the root chakra. It extends down into the earth. This is what helps you breathe it down and make it more real in your life. You can be in a group meditation and have a spiritual experience. You can be on your own and have a spiritual experience, but it doesn't last unless you start breathing it down and breathing it in to your body so that you're working with all of the levels at the same time: the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual. I'm giving you all this today because I know how it feels right now. It's very easy to feel alone. It is very easy to feel like God is not here, and it's very easy to feel that no one cares. And in fact, the opposite is true. You are never alone because God is always with you. You are loved and cared for. Literally, the whole universe is made of love. And in fact, everything you need is here for you. So I just invite you to breathe that idea in that no matter how it looks, God is here with you. You are not alone. That the whole universe is literally here supporting you. And that everything happening in the outer is actually conspiring to bring your soul its good from the highest realm. So rather than having your focus on everything in the world, shift that. And you will find you have plenty to do. You will find you have plenty to focus on. And you will also find tremendous power, energy, love, and support from the universe. In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. So the place has been prepared, and all that's missing is you. So I encourage you, dear friend, to do the deeper work, to be quiet, to rest in what you know to be true, to breathe. And you will be amazed all the gifts of the universe that are there for you. And they will come when you most need it, when you least expect it. Always, always, God is here for you. So we encourage you on this journey, dear friend, to take heart, to remember that there's a lot of support for you. Here at Experience of the Soul podcast channel, there are shows every single day to lift you up. There's affirmations. There's the show today, Authentic Spiritual Journey. There's the Wednesday message. There's the Friday meditation. Remember, friend, we are here to lift you up and support you, but we encourage you to do your work, the work of the soul, knowing that as you do, you will grow, prosper, and evolve. So this is our prayer for you, dear friend, and we are so grateful you join us. We are honored that you trust us and that you share your journey with us. We bless you and always are praying for you for God's highest and best in your life. Thank you for joining us today, and many blessings.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by Natural Awakenings Magazine and Zen Living Realty. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, Nora Miles, Diana Cox, Leslie Williams, Susanna Garcia, Shayla Mount, Dorothy Moore, Aggie Payton, Taryn Tucker, and Anna Evans. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2020 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.